Viewers, welcome back to the Personal Injury Law Show. We're not going to be doing a mailbag this week because we've got our learned colleague here, Mr. Greg Barnes, who's very hard to get on the show, but I really want to thank you for coming on board this week, Greg.
Thank you.
And he's got invaluable experience and knowledge in relation to the matters we're discussing. Greg, can you tell us about the Ahmed case, which is it's a landmark decision again, isn't it?
This was a case in the Northern Territory, and what happened was that with people smuggling cases, the Commonwealth's customs officials were effectively going out and capturing and detaining people on boats, including the crews, alleged to be people smugglers, outside the 12-mile limit, because as we know, you've got a 12-mile territorial limit out, and then you're into international waters or the broader Australian zone. And the law at that time said essentially, as interpreted by the Northern Territory Supreme Court, said that, look, if you arrest people outside the 12-mile limit, they've committed no offence. And therefore, if they've been convicted on that basis, they've been wrongfully convicted. The government then panicked and changed the law. And the law now makes it much more difficult, and effectively the Commonwealth's got carte blanche in relation to anyone coming
even
within about 50 k's of Australian.
Zone.
Yeah, you know, anyone coming within about 50 k's of Australian waters.
Just on that point there, Alice, they've quashed the conviction of Ahmed, and obviously there'll be others that will be trying to do the same thing. Even though they've changed the law and they've made it retrospective, are they entitled to compensation?
Look, Tony, I think that they are, and perhaps for the viewer's benefit, when a law is changed and it applies retrospectively, what that means is that the law might be different now and from what happens from today onwards, but it can also apply to what's happened in the past, which is a really controversial issue. But even though the law says that even if you were captured 5 years ago, which is before Ahmed, then it's still okay, we can't quash your conviction because you're within that 50 k's that Greg is talking about. But I think really, at the end of the day, Tony, there is an avenue for compensation for people here, especially given the ages of some of these people and the issues surrounding that, and especially given the circumstances, because what Greg was telling us before is that basically these people have authority to go out and just pick a boat and have a go at convicting them all, and I think it's a real worry.
Greg, in that video of Cornelia Rao, she settled her case. They got 2.4 million and she was put through the hoop. And then the Commonwealth settled 247 cases after that. And it was pretty quiet. No one really heard about that.
Those figures, the Australian Lawyers Alliance, which I'm national president, had some figures given to it last year as a result of a Freedom of Information application, showing that around the Commonwealth's paid out between 1999 and when we got the figures late last year, around about $20 million in false imprisonment claims, mental shock claims, physical health claims, whole range of claims.
Illegal detention.
Yeah. So in relation to the people smuggling cases, particularly if you've got young people who've been put, for example, as happened in Brisbane, where they were put into adult prison cells and adult prison yards.
And exposed to all the fighting.
Well, it's illegal to hold people under the age of 18 in an adult prison setting in every state in Australia, and certainly means that liability for compensation is enlivened as a result. And I think there are real issues there now around about the ill treatment of young people and children, in effect, on these people smuggling boats, and how they've been ill treated by the Commonwealth.
Alice, the people smugglers that work on these boats,
Yes.
aren't the people smugglers.
Well, Tony...
They're young people and people that are pretty ignorant or desperate for money, and they're probably on those boats by mistake, through necessity.
I understand, Tony, for example, that there can be children or people under the age of 18, younger people who are in poorer parts of countries other than Australia, can be lured onto boats for any purpose. I think it gets
on the basis they're going to be going on a fishing trip.
Yes, or on some sort of a trip or somehow, and they end up within 12 miles of Australia.
And they get picked up by the Coast Guard.
But I understand that there's also a lot of issues surrounding how they determine the age of these children. I believe the government's preoccupied, if I'm not wrong, with first their age rather than their status or who they are, where they've come from and what their story is. It's all about how old
Alice,
they are.
It's a bit worse than that because they don't even contact the parents to let them know they're still alive. Greg, the Victorian Legal Aid have been to the islands as well to be able to try and work out the background of some of these children that have been detained and charged as adults. And by doing that, they've managed to ascertain that they're under the age of 18.
Well, that's right, because the Commonwealth's been using this very controversial bone X-ray or wrist X-ray technique, which is discredited now. It's a forensic technique not used anywhere else in the world, but the federal police have insisted on using it. And it's done to determine the age of a person, whether or not they're under or over 18. But in a number of cases, it's been proved to be wrong. And so anyone, I would have thought, who's in that category of a young person who was wrongfully convicted as an adult and detained on the basis that they're an adult, I would have thought has a very, very strong case for some form of compensation.
Just on that point, Alice, the law when it comes to people smuggling, do you know what it is in terms of if you're convicted?
From what I understand, Tony, if you are found to be a people smuggler and you're over the age of 18, there is a mandatory 5 years in prison.
Well, if you've got more than 5 people on the boat, and more often than not there's more than 5, isn't there, Greg?
Well, in many cases, and you know, every judge who's had to sentence in this area, whether it be in the Northern Territory, Queensland, Western Australia, it doesn't matter. Every judge has said this is unjust. It's extraordinary when you get a situation where senior judges in Australia are saying that this is a grossly unjust law and appealing for mercy in respect of the particular person.
Greg,
you get the Commonwealth saying we're not going to do anything about it.
We'll have to do this on another occasion because time's moving. But just to surmise, what's happened to Alice is that once they're determined to be children, their convictions are quashed. They let them out of jail and they reunite with the families. But the thing is, are they entitled to compensation, Alice?
Tony, I would say even in the face of Ahmed that they are, because if you've got children in state prisons who are under the age of 18 mixing with adults, which, as Greg pointed out earlier, is illegal, and you've got a government preoccupied with finding out the age of the children rather than their status so they can convict them under these mandatory laws, I think it's a real problem. And I think eventually something will have to give, and then that's when you can step in and say, well, hang on, there's got to be a right to compensation here.
We'll have to come back to this, guys. Greg, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I really
Tony.
appreciate it. Alice,
Thanks,
thank you
Alice.
again.
Thank you, Tony.
I want to
Thank
thank
you,
the viewers for watching. Remember Facebook. Also go to the website, thepishow.com. Twitter, send in your questions, and also, once again, stay tuned and stay safe. Thank you.